all the tasks are and trying to wrap our head around what we need to do and when. And so we said next week we'll definitely have a meeting next Tuesday. So
Good deal. It's inching closer every day.
all the tasks are and trying to wrap.
Shoot, where'd you go? All right, we're now streaming live on YouTube.
So it means behave.
Can we still idly banter?
If you
May we
can,
blink?
if you can be disciplined, then yes. Okay, when I haven't started the recording yet, but we are live on YouTube. And then Vince, Jeff needs to share his screen also, or just be a panelist?
Share a screen.
Okay. Patrick's all set already.
Yep. And then obviously Annette when we get to her segment as well.
Okay. Vince, would you like Chief McCormick to be a panelist?
You know, I was just thinking that, yeah, I actually would.
Okay.
Because he's probably going to weigh in on both the first two items.
All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. And just a reminder for those just joining us, we are live on YouTube.
I'm going to check and see if the mayor's able to get on. He's in his office.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Michelle, could you send the mayor another invite? He's been trying to get in and
You should go to the calendar, but let's see. Let's see.
are you sending it as a calendar or?
No, I was just going to say he should go to the
Email?
calendar on the website because the link is there. The live,
Okay.
but I'll try to do that. One second. All right. Okay, I sent it.
Okay, I'll let him know.
There he is.
Good evening, all. It took a minute.
Glad you're here.
Yep, in a couple minutes. I think I was the last one, so Mr. Pastu let me know. I'll give him a second to get back as well.
All right. And we are live on YouTube and we are recording, so we're set to go
Okay.
as far as the clerk's concerned.
All right, well, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll call the city council work session to order. Clerk, if you could call the rolls, please, and remind the location of all the attendees.
Councilperson Whitman,
Here in Monroe.
Iko Angeli,
Present, Grand Rapids, Kent County.
Vining,
Here, Monroe, Michigan.
Germani,
Here, Monroe, Michigan.
Lamore,
Present, City of Monroe.
Felder,
Present, City of Monroe.
Mayor Clark.
Present, City of Monroe.
And as clerk treasurer, I'm here in the city of Monroe as well.
Very good. So we have some items, Mr. Pastu, that at least 3 listed, and I'll just turn it over to you to get started on our work session for the topics.
Thank you, Your Honor. The purpose of this work session item regarding the conversion of Cass Harrison to two-way traffic, we discussed last fall when we were reviewing the data for 7th and 8th, the council asked, and that was last fall, to bring this back in January. And so tonight, we bring this forward. We had met internally with, myself, city engineer, Patrick Lewis, and the police department, Chief McCormick and Captain Tolstead, and Bill Walters with Superintendent for Public Works, Public Services. And so we put this together and wanted to talk with council about if we were to proceed with this, what we would recommend from a staff standpoint for its implementation, addressing on-street parking, some of the issues that we have at the south end of Cass and the alley to the immediate east, as well as challenges at the first front and Harrison intersection. And so, based on that, I'm going to have Mr. Lewis proceed with the presentation, and certainly feel free to ask questions as we go along. And at the end of this, as council is comfortable with going forward with it, we would recommend that we administratively send a letter out to all the property owners on Cass and Harrison, letting them know that we will discuss this at February 1st session, if that's the pleasure of council. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lewis for his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pastu. Good evening. Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services for the City of Monroe. I can share my screen here. This is the packet of information that was in the fact sheet attached with your agenda packets. I'll try to breeze through this fairly quickly, just because I know there may be some questions, and I'll just kind of outline how we went about this. So what I've got up on here is I'll go back to the memo here and just kind of point out what attachments I'm going to show you tonight here. And as Mr. Pastu pointed out, we did meet as a group to try to come up with a consensus about what we wanted to present for you. And we're pretty much already there. So we're all on the same mind about this. So what you've got in the packet here, and I'll scroll through these as we go, just with a brief discussion. The first thing is an overview map in which you'll see numbers on the side. That's the width of the street between curb faces. And then I've got each side of the road color coded by parking. If it's green, it's parking permitted, and that will stay. If it's red, there's no parking, and that will also stay. The yellow zones are parking where we've got it currently allowed, but we're going to propose to remove that if it's converted to two-way traffic. And then teal is parking permitted, but that's got some special restrictions, like it's a residential parking district or 2-hour parking as you get farther north. Those will all remain as they are, but I wanted to delineate those. I'll show you a map here that's got the recommendations for barricading at the south end of Cass Street and the alley. And then we've got another detailed map that shows the first Harrison front intersection. I'll get to that when we come up to that point in the presentation. And then I've got listed there for your reading the 2 traffic control orders that we would propose. I do want to add a couple of things to those relative to offsetting parking from the corner. I did not detail all that on the TCOs. And then lastly, I've got a spreadsheet, which we presented the first time this came up, where we were, and actually with 7th and 8th Street as well, where we did a comparison of other streets across the city that were similar width to particularly Cass, which is 26 for most of its length. And I've highlighted some streets that are of particular interest, given that they have parallels of traffic volume and usage, things like that. So I'll scroll down to the first map here. I know it may be a little hard to read. It's hard to zoom in much closer, but the very bottom of the screen right down here is 8th Street. So we've got a little bit of Cass cut off as it goes into the Kroger Center there, but the rest of this is pretty visible. So I'll start with Cass Street. And Cass Street is 26 feet wide between curb faces from 8th Street until you get up to 4th Street. And then as you go north, it widens out. It's actually 32 feet between 4th and 3rd, and that's where the old Boyd School was. And then north of 3rd, it widens out to 36. And 36 is plenty of width for dedicated parking lanes on each side, as well as 2 lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction. So coming back the other way on Harrison Street, Harrison is 36 between 1st and 3rd as well. That narrows down to 26 between 3rd and 4th near the Methodist Church. And then it's actually 28 from 4th all the way down to 8th Street. And that was all just rebuilt this past year between 4th and 8th. So as you look at the zones, as I have them color coded, the green is, we looked at this and recommended, at least for now, no change in the parking. So you'll note on Harrison Street between 8th and 4th, there was some concern about whether that will be too tight for parking. Clearly, there's not 2 dedicated lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction. But we do feel that the overall volumes are low enough that even if you do have a conflict on either end of the block, then you just have to pull in behind a parked car, just kind of like we do right now on other streets of that similar width. And there's quite a few. I didn't even delineate how many other streets in town have 28-foot width with parking on both sides, because it's quite a substantial list. One of the areas going north on Harrison Street, you'll see there's no parking on the west side between 3rd and 4th. That's because the block is 26. So that gets a little tighter. The thing about that is there's really no demand for parking on that side because there's very few homes. There's the church, Boyd Park, and then the parking lot for the church. So there's really not a lot of demand. And then, of course, just like with Cass Street, once you get north of 3rd Street, it's got room for a dedicated lane in each direction. So I'll look back in Cass starting from the south, and that would be, at present, there's parking on the west side only. until you get up to the block between 5th and 6th. That block was changed in, I think, 1999 and included, we put parking on the east side as well. That was at the request of, I'll say it was one large property owner that had multiple rental units there. And that was actually fairly controversial. That was when I'd first started with the city. That's the one block we're recommending for a change because it's pretty tight in there. And the other thing we also looked at was on 5th Street, there's quite a bit of open parking here to the north. So when you're worrying about displacing vehicles, there's some parking spaces in fairly close proximity that overflow could go towards. So we thought for consistency with the rest of Cass, we would recommend this block be left at one-sided parking. So what you'd have is you'd have Cass Street that would have parking on the west side only, and that would be an 8-foot parking lane, which would leave you about 18 feet of travel width, which would be shared by both directions. Now, it's important to note that is exactly the width that we have right now on West 7th Street. So we'll come to that when I get to the comparison table. And then continuing north on Cass Street, as we pointed out before, we feel that it's wide enough, certainly in the 36-foot sections, but the 32-foot section as well. There just isn't enough traffic. And on this 32-foot section, there's actually quite a few gaps based on driveways and things so that you could slow down, wait for the opposing direction to pass. Couple of geometric call outs I want to make here, and we'll show this in a little better detail in a subsequent map, is we're recommending for now that the block of Harrison between 1st and 2nd remain as one-way southbound. And the main reason for that is the geometry at this intersection. We don't feel that we think it could be quite confusing, and there's a pretty strong possibility of cars getting clipped there from those that want to make this turn from front, turning south. And if you were to open this up to northbound traffic, not only would you have to restrict those to only right turns, but they'd be hanging out in the intersection close enough that the cars turning this way might clip their front ends. And then, of course, the short block between 1st and front on Cass Street, we're recommending that stay one-way northbound. And a lot of that has to do with the geometrics at front and Cass, where it's designed to basically throw traffic from northbound into westbound. And it's got a very tight radius on this corner, the southeast corner. So those are the two blocks that we're recommending stay as one way, but the rest of it we'd be recommending for conversion. So maybe I'll pause there to see if there's any questions on this before we move on.
Earl, see any questions from council? I think it kind of reviews what we've discussed previously. This just makes it in front of us in mapping as well as some description.
Patrick?
Yes.
Patrick, could you go to just that front first Harrison interchange? I think that, I think that obviously it was in the packet, but I think that would probably close the loop. If you could go to the.
Yeah, I'll go to if you don't mind, I'll go to the detail on that one.
Yeah,
we'll skip over this and we'll go to the detail sheet on that. This kind of shows you what we had in mind here. And yeah, you could, most people, if they saw a vehicle here waiting, which is what you'd have if you converted this to two-way, is you could have a car sitting here waiting for traffic to clear. And we've already decided that it would have to be restricted to right turns only. But even with a car sitting here at the stop bar, if somebody is used to cutting this corner very wide and does something like this at a higher rate of speed, you could have a lot of, I'll say, clip accidents. And then not to mention, especially if somebody here does the wrong thing and attempts to make this turn around the left side of the island, you've got the potential for quite a few conflicts. So I think rather than have this be the controlling factor on the rollout of going to two-way, we're going to leave this block the way it is in anticipation that if successful and we start to do this on 1st and Front Streets, we'd be looking at a wholesale reconfiguration of this intersection in general. So any other questions on that detail?
I don't see any. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just on 26, 28 foot, why are we allowing, I'm looking at this, is that parking on both sides on the 28 foot and only on one side of the 26 foot? Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct, yes.
Is that 2 foot going to make that much of a difference?
Well, it's not, normally it wouldn't be enough difference. I mean, you're talking about one-sided versus two-sided. Is it going to make that much of a difference? No, what we think is, and again, this is sort of a tough call because the parking on Harrison Street is clearly in demand. So taking parking off of one side is a fairly radical change, and it's got to be balanced with the existing and projected traffic volumes that we're going to have there. And I'll get into that with the traffic control. Well, I can get into it now. One of the things that you run into is if you have parked cars, let's say densely on both sides of that street, and you're still going to have a 12-foot lane in between there. So it's a plenty wide lane. It's just it's clearly not going to be enough for cars in both directions. But what you need to the challenge we have on Harrison is there's not as many driveways, at least on the southerly couple of blocks. And so you've got to make sure that you've got adequate space that if, let's say, two cars turn from the cross street at the same time. Let's say one car turns off of 7th, the other car turns off of 8th, and they're going in opposite directions. One obviously is going to have to yield to the other. It's kind of the same philosophy we were looking at on 7th and 8th Street, where if it's too tight for two streams of traffic, one has to wait for the other. Now, mathematically, on a 26-foot wide street with parking on one side, you could actually have 2 lanes of travel, but they'll only be 9 feet wide, which means that some people are going to use extreme caution, try to hug the curb and still try to pass without having to slow down. Other people will pull in behind a parked car and just wait. So the whole idea behind this whole process was to slow traffic down and return these to neighborhood street usage. And so that's what we're looking at there. Taking parking off one side of Harrison kind of creates double that problem. You've got 2 10-foot lanes then. So you'd essentially have a wider street. Yeah, is 2 feet going to make all the difference in the world? Probably not, but it's a little bit more comfortable for two-way traffic. But you've just relocated a lot of people, a lot of parking demand on that street versus Cass, where right now you don't have that parking demand because you really only have parking on one side except for one of the 4 blocks in there. So it's a balancing act between resident convenience on parking and trying to slow down the traffic by not creating. I wouldn't want to see Harrison with 20 feet of open space. Let's put it that way, because I think that would encourage higher speeds. 18 versus 20 could be a little bit of a difference. Is it huge? No, but I guess that's the best answer I can give you.
I have one other question as well. Stop signs. Did we add stop signs
No.
in these intersections, or are they all the same?
We're not recommending any change on there. I can tell you of the stop control, what you have going south to north on Cass is you have, and we would recommend they remain all-way stops at 8th, 7th, and 6th. Cass Street stops at 3rd, and Cass Street stops at 1st. That's the police department is doing some before and after speed studies on Cass Street right now. So they've got the speed trailer on Cass in a fairly, I'll say, wide open section between 3rd and 4th. Harrison going southbound has stop signs that aren't necessarily always, but they're essentially at the same intersections. There's no stop at 1st because it's one way going away from it. There's a stop sign for Harrison at 3rd, stop sign for Harrison at 6th, which is not an all-way, stop sign at 7th and 8th also, which are not all-way stops. The one change we would have is geometrically driven, and that is Harrison at 2nd. Because if we're creating the point where that transitions from one-way to two-way, we're going to introduce a new stop sign at 2nd because of that factor. But I've stated this numerous times in my career here. We've done extensive studies that bear this out. Stop signs are not a good speed control device. They're not supposed to be used that way. And we've seen actually the reverse problem where you've taken people that might be marginal speeders and now you've turned them into marginal rolling stop runners, because those all-way stops tend to get violated more than just a two-way stop, because there's a perception that, well, the other guy has to stop too, so we'll just roll through this one. And we don't want to trade one problem for another. That's why we're not recommending any change in that, because the volumes don't justify it at 4th and 5th. So those would be the only intersections that we would that are at the present time uncontrolled, and 2nd Street, but we don't feel those are appropriate.
Other questions from council members? I don't see any. No hands raised.
Okay, I think we've already talked about this map, so I'm going to go up to the Cass Street barricade slide, if you will. So the other part of this equation, and this has kind of been the main issue at the heart of this, is we've heard the concerns from residents about the traffic volumes on Cass Street right now. And we've done studies. We haven't really looked at Harrison's traffic volumes because we just looking at those in the past. I mean, I've spent a lot of time on Harrison Street this last year with construction being down there, and it doesn't seem like we have very high volumes at all on Harrison, but Cass is a different story because it's got that exit from Kroger. And now how much of that traffic dissipates as you get to 7th and people start to turn left? It seems like it gets lighter as you go farther north. We haven't taken speed studies at every block or volume studies at every block. OHM has done traffic counts at the intersections of 8th, 7th, and 6th. So we can use those as our background data. But I think there's a general belief that half or more of the traffic on Cass Street originates at Kroger. And so any concerns we might have about Cass being too congested, if we cut the traffic volume in half, now you've got a street that's going to operate a lot like Harrison, and which is exactly what we want. Eliminate the traffic that doesn't belong there, and by creating two-way traffic, slowing down the remaining traffic. So with that in mind, after agonizing about this, I know internally for a number of years, I know council has been back and forth on this. We feel like we should place a barricade at the end of Cass Street, just south of Long Court. And we'll certainly long-term, we do something more permanent, but what we're looking at doing is putting up some guardrail and probably having some concrete blocks behind the guardrail. We don't want the blocks to be in front, with some reflective signage and tape and things like that. But the other thing that was brought up in the past too was that we do have this alley that lies between Cass and Monroe Street that, while I can't vouch for how much through traffic might be going through there now, the perception is if you block it off here, people are going to start coming through here. So we're going to do that at both places. We do show this as an L-shaped barricade because there's a pretty wide open parking lot in here that we're going to have to do more than just place it across the alley. Again, I've pointed out in the past, we're not clear at all about this section where I'm waving my hand over on Cass Street. It was part of the platted sub that includes the rest of this area, but the road commission doesn't certify it. Monroe Township doesn't certify it. We don't certify it. We can't certify it because it's outside of our boundaries. So we don't know whose it is. The other part of this though is, so that's why we're recommending closing it at the city line rather than somewhere else, because we know we have the right to do it here. And you've also got the First Merchants Bank building that if you closed it farther south, people would use that as the cut through. So we're trying to just block off any possible escape routes. With that in mind, we do think we're going to need to have some visible dead end signage, because what we don't want is people coming out of Kroger, getting in here, looping around through. We want to make it as clear as possible. So we'll have that sign clearly as dead ends on both ends of the block. So that is our proposal. I don't have a hard and fast number as far as what you can expect for a traffic drop. I'm going to throw out 50%. I have no real scientific basis for that because we haven't done an origin and destination survey. We're not approaching people in the front of Kroger and saying, where are you going? Which way are you going out? Where do you live? That's the way you would do it. But we don't feel that we need to go to that. We're gonna do before and after, and we'll know pretty quickly how much that traffic drops. But I feel, and we all feel confidently, that if you block off these entrances from Kroger, Cass Street's traffic will drop enough that the two-way traffic will largely be a non-issue. That's our belief, and we'll hopefully in a few months it will bear that out. So that's the geometrics we're showing at the south end. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Ryan, I'll start with you and see who else has questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just when we barricade off that alley and Cass, it's going to cause more people to turn on to Monroe Street, obviously. And there's one that does not have a light at it. So somebody that's turning left, that could be a potential hazard as far as accidents go. Is this something we've considered?
That's an excellent question, Councilman. And I almost included that in my discussion, but I figured that question would come up. That's been the main concern, I guess, of if there was reticence about doing this in the past, it would be that issue. Presently there are 4 there's really 6 exits out of Kroger. There's a Cass Street one that we'd be closing off. There'd be this alley. There's the North Drive, which actually is at the south end of this photograph. This was actually intended to be, it's in the plat as 9th Street, but it's a privately held driveway. So you've got 1, 2, 3 at this north end. You've got the signalized driveway, which is at Jones. And then you've actually got 2 to the south of Jones that come out to Monroe Street. You actually have a 7th access point, but I wouldn't recommend using it. It goes all the way around behind Kroger and kind of ties in where like 10th Street would be and goes back to Harrison Smith and those streets. But not many people use that because it's a pothole riddled mess. But that is the concern, is that if you shut these off, is the traffic going to migrate primarily to this driveway, or is it going to go south to the light? We would hope as much as possible goes south to the light, but certainly we can't control that. And that is something that we could monitor. I mean, I don't want to say it's not in the city, so it's not our concern, because that's not really true. I mean, we try to look at these things holistically, but that kind of shows the point where, why wasn't this studied when this Kroger site plan was discussed? And I think that's a concern that we've raised. That doesn't mean we should discount the concern about crashes, but that was something that ideally should have been raised at the time that Kroger expanded, and there were some other modifications to the site.
Michelle Tremaine.
So the barricades at the end for snow removal purposes, would the snow get piled up against those barricades? What would that look like?
That's an excellent question, and the same, probably about the same thing that happens at the rest of our dead ends, and we've got quite a few. This one we would. Our trucks would probably turn the corner and go around Long Court on the first pass, and we'd plow it at the end of there where we currently do as well, but it wouldn't be quite that simple. Probably some would get piled up against the guardrail, and with a loader, we could always throw it on the back side of the guardrail too if we needed to. We'd prefer not to do that, because then we'd have to probably be obligated to pick it back up. It's not perfect, but yeah, it would essentially get jammed up against the guardrail.
Okay, and one other question, the alleyway, are those all garages back behind there?
Yeah, this one here at 823, I think they take their access off of this private parking lot here. And then this garage here would take their access from the south. And then the rest of these obviously would have to come in from the north. But yeah, for the most part, those are garages. This is like a commercial building here. So we're not cutting off anybody's access. It's just everybody that is in the Monroe Township side of things would come in from the private drive, and everybody from the city side would come in from the north. We're not trying to block out Monroe Township versus city. It's just we have to block it where we have the legal right to do so, and we have the legal right to do so on our public right of way. So we go farther south, and we probably don't have the legal right to close it there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Patrick,
Paula, go ahead.
I can't find my little hand. I don't know where it's at. So.
Okay.
I go to Kroger almost every day, and it is a cluttered mess. I don't know why there aren't more accidents than what there are already. And my feeling is that where these barricades are at, especially the one cutting off on by Long Court, that's just going to cause more congestion. Part of the good thing about having Cass Street open there is that people can remove themselves from the Kroger parking lot area. To get to the traffic light, you're not even sure which aisle goes to the traffic light because it's not marked very well. It's I don't know, and every time they do something new there, the parking lot becomes worse. When that gas station was up in front of there, it was really bad. But I'm not real happy about the barricade, just because I know that That's how I hurry up and get out of the parking lot and out of that section, to get away from Kroger's and that traffic. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to put that out there.
Let me just, part of the exercise too is again to turn, Cass and Harrison, more toward a residential street. I know when we had OHM do the traffic study a couple years ago, I was astounded at a peak hour number of 200 vehicles on Cass Street, which was just remarkable because there isn't that much residential traffic that should be going through there. But the other thing it does is that and again, part of this is our feeling is it's going to push much of that traffic onto, South Monroe, to access into that shopping center, and actually coming out, the safest way would be to use a signal there at Jones in South Monroe. It's really what you want is to, if you were doing, most site plan reviews would have required that, to be honest with you. And we're trying to adapt for what we feel were some pretty significant oversights and frankly, throwing the burden on to our residents to deal with those oversight.
And
maybe it wasn't an maybe it was planned. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, and one thing I want to add too about the signal, I know Councilman Moore has his hand up, but
I got some comments too, Patrick, so we can move along.
Sure. The signal there, when OHM did the traffic study, we did model this a possibility with the streets being closed off. And what they found was that we probably would need to ask MDOT to tweak the signal timing there as much as a 50-50 split of green time to accommodate all those if everybody used the signalized driveway. So it's not like we couldn't make operational improvements there if needed, but it's not ours to make. We'd have to ask MDOT to do that. And I don't know if you want to wait for them to come to that conclusion on their own. If we proactively ask them, it might be several months before they get down to doing a study. Or I suppose if we were to barricade these off, we're going to force the issue, if you will. But I don't think we know for sure how many people will use the signal versus the unsignalized. It probably depends on how far the backup gets and people get frustrated and go out the other drives. But I wish I could give you a more scientific answer, but it's all individual behavior. But I did want to point out that the signal is still predominantly green time for Monroe Street. So it could be modified somewhat to alleviate some of that congestion.
All right, I'll start because, there's a couple of comments on Cass and the barricades. And I haven't supported that. I think the converting from one way to two way is something we should be moving forward. I do have some concerns with the blocking. Councilwoman said her point. I don't think we can say it's not residential traffic because it's the people coming out of there are living in the residence, maybe not on Cass Street, but adjoining streets. As some residents have shared, minimal, but a few, they use that route, just as Paula said. I don't know how that's going to change when they come out the front and down Monroe Street, when they can simply turn back onto 8th Street and go back in the way that they would normally go out. I don't know that. I think to me there's a lot of questions. No question is going to reduce the traffic, but but it doesn't say when they're going to come back into the area, and still could be using Cass Street. There's to me, we're changing the use of Cass Street to the residents that live there, with not concern with the other residents that live adjoining streets that use that as a route when they go shopping or come out. I can't speak for the township residents. I'm sure there's many of those as well, because we know they can go up 8th Street now and go back in the back way, and they're not going to use that back gravel road with the potholes. I agree, that goes into Merkle Street. That's an alternative that the township needs probably to consider. That aside, I just think that, I don't know what the traffic, I don't know what the volume is going to be. I don't know that it's going to change if we close that. Oh, it'll change less, but I don't know that if it's open, it'll be that much more. That's what we don't know. And we're just changing one discussion point for another that I think will come down the road. I'm not 100% on the barricades. Brian, your hand's up, and then John, Brian had this, and then John, I'll get to you next. Brian?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one more thing regarding the barricade on Cass. You're right. That's where people are going to enter from those neighborhoods. on Cass because they don't want to go all the way over to Monroe Street and get on that busy street, turn right, and then turn right again into the parking lot from the front end there. They want to go in from that backside there to enter into the Kroger parking lot. I get it. So I'm not sure if that barricade would be a good thing or not. And I think we all are kind of questioning it. I get it's going to slow down Cass Street considerably, at least 50%. I would agree with you 100%, but I'm not sure if it's really going to suit its purpose of being able to convey traffic the way we want it to, as far as putting more people on Monroe Street, congesting that even further, and making that front entrance of Kroger even worse. So I'm not really sold on it. I'll be honest with you. So that's my opinion. We'll go from there.
John,
Thanks, Your Honor. Let's, well, first off, Cass Street was never intended to be a collector for the neighborhood. It was designed as a residential street. But let's just take a look at the aerial photograph that's in front of us. Based on the shadows on the lights, it looks like this was taken this is obviously in the day. It looks like maybe it was taken at 11 o'clock in the morning, based on the shadows. Parking lot at Kroger's is pretty much full. You've got 2 cars on Monroe Street, 5-lane highway, 2 cars. Over at Cass Street, you've got 1 car that's turning into the Kroger lot. You've got 2 cars that are going back into Cass Street. That intersection right there, actually, when this was taken, has more cars than what's on Monroe Street. And we should be pushing as much traffic as possible from a traffic point of view on the Monroe Street. I think putting the barricades up to try it out as a temporary measure will satisfy some of the concerns on both sides of council, those that are in support of turning that back into totally residential, and then we'll evaluate if it has any other impact on the most northern drive and what the impact is going to be on Monroe Street. But I'm like Paul, I go to Kroger's a lot, and there's a ton of people that go down Cass just so they don't have to go to the light to get on Monroe Street. And it just doesn't make sense that the people on Cass Street have to put up with the extra traffic when there's five entrances on the Kroger lot that go out onto Monroe Street. I just can't see it. I mean, Monroe Street's not that busy. Actually, we don't get that much congestion on Monroe Street. Aerial photography shows it right here. 2 cars on Monroe Street. You got 3 cars heading over to Cass.
I'll just say it's hard to tell from this because of the, time frame, traffic lights, whether they're green, red on Monroe Street. There's a variety of items I think that are in discussion. To me, it's really about where we want to flow the traffic to, and changing it with the barricades isn't going to put it prohibit those to come back into the area. I think it is a residential street, and I think the other residents are using it, whether that's going into Kroger's or coming down a different way. John, I agree. I think there's a way to evaluate this, but I kind of looked at the opposite side. It should be left open, then evaluate whether it's a greater issue than what it currently is, or is it making a change with it being open. And if it's not, then and then we had data that would say that, then I would at least have that information to know that it should be closed. And I'm not sure that it should, because we're going to disadvantage some other residents that use it that way for the purpose of getting around. Other hands, other comments? Andrew.
Thank you, Connor. I know that, residents have certainly been vocal on this issue in the past, and we've certainly had people that came to council chambers when we were still having in-person meetings, and I spoke with some of them. I know that other council members spoke with some of them and picked their brains on thoughts. I spoke with people on Long Court. I spoke with people on Cass and on Harrison. And not only do the people who not live on Cass use Cass, and they would be upset by it, but the people on Cass said that they would be upset by it if the street was closed off. Now, I get what we're trying to do here, and I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. What I do know is that the people who are trying to help out here might hate the cure more than the illness. And I think that it's almost the same way for the two-way thing. I totally understand and believe the engineering study of what we've been told, and I think that it's going to slow down traffic there. I think the barricades are absolutely going to decrease volume there. But the people who live there said they absolutely do not want it. The people I've been sent here to represent have told us in no unequivocal terms that they don't want to do it. And I don't know how we can justify it. It's sometimes it really is that easy for me. I'd like to go with it. I'd really like to be persuaded. But the people who are trying to help out here have been jumping up and down and screaming, saying, don't do it.
I might have a comment, but I'll see if others do. Thank you, Andrew. You know, I'll start and then see if there's generating. So I look at the two items. Andrew, I agree. The first was the conversion that we've talked about. We talked about it from 7th and 8th Street. We did get the Cass Street and some some Harrison Street members in the community that weren't supportive of that as well. I think they think that the two-way street and some of the discussions they had there, you know, about children and items. I don't know that that's the way. I think it's just a change. One of the items that we said from the beginning was these homes were built in a fashion as residential streets with access from the alleyways. But it's difficult for that to be used by residents when, you know, you can walk through there, you can drive through there and see the volume of items that are consuming the backside of the residence. And that's how it was designed. And the idea is going back to the two-way streets is they're going to have access from their alleyways. And we have some responsibility to make sure those are at a level that are functional. And some of the cars and light and other things I know that the manager is going to talk to the council about as well need to be implemented. But it's hard to utilize the back when there's a camper, a truck, a trailer, and no cars parked there. And then the multiple rental properties with 4 residents that consume the front. So those are the issues at hand for the two-way street more so for me. I understand some residents don't support it, but I think we moved forward with 7th and 8th Street and saw that didn't cause the challenges that were brought forth. I think the conversion is in a larger discussion plan for movement of through residential streets, but also through the downtown as we move forward with that. My only concern is the barricades at this point, but I take your point. I understand that, Andrew, that we have some residents that are not supportive. John.
Yeah, Your Honor, I'm a long game player. I don't have a problem if the majority of council doesn't want to put the barricades up, because my thought is if we go to two-way traffic, the friction alone on the street is going to force the people that usually take Cass Street as a faster avenue instead of Monroe Street. They're going to head back to Monroe Street if it takes them slower to get down Cass. So I think the actual friction caused by the two-way is going to change car behavior. So it's not going to be as convenient for people to cut through the neighborhood if they think they're going slower.
Understand? Vince, I guess you had a comment.
I think, you know, we saved the big issue for last in the discussion. I'm getting the sense that we're probably okay with the on-street parking discussion as part of the two-way conversion. Certainly, I think, you know, if any concerns about the front First and Harrison intersection change that was discussed, and what I would need is okay, what do you want to do with these barricades? Do you want to put them up even temporarily, or do you want to just have it open up with the proposed changes? Because we do have to send some information out to the residents if we're you know, as to what that plan would look like. So I just need council's feedback on it.
Okay, Brian, we'll start.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would definitely say the barricade at Cass has definitely got to go. Potentially the barricade at the alleyway, I'm not certain about that. That may be able to stay. Not sure if that's going to help or hinder, but I would say definitely the barricade at Cass for sure. And I'd really like to hear some of the residents' thoughts. You know, just at least listen to their concerns, see what they've got to say. I agree with Andrew that we need to listen to them.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be that opportunity at a hearing if moving forward, no matter what the final is. The alleyway is not my concern as much as Cass Street is as well, because I think we probably should try to structure that more so than Cass. Michelle Germaini.
I am also against the barricades. And I too want to hear from the residents to see what they're thinking about this. I just feel like the barricades entrap everyone in that neighborhood. I don't like that. That's how I feel.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think that, well, that was my start point. And to John's point, I agree that if there's data that shows otherwise, then we would definitely have to reconsider if it's not meeting the overall needs for all residents. Other comments?
I have one comment. I look at the barricades and I start thinking that, a fire in the neighborhood and the fire engines, and it just seems like it's a barrier to other things than just cars in the neighborhood. It just doesn't feel like it's a good idea.
I think John had an alternative. Kelly, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that because in my neighborhood, we have a lot of those barricades and it does give a sense of being trapped. And as far as the two-way traffic conversions, early on in our discussions, we talked about making a better traffic flow for the city and especially in and out of the downtown area. So I just think the barricades kind of go against the opening up the traffic flow. And I agree with everything everyone said about the Kroger parking lot is horrible. And if Patrick is still on the line, I use Harrison. Well, I avoid it as much as I can, but sometimes I have to use Harrison. And are you saying that I'm sorry if I missed it, 2 cars could fit down there with parking on both sides? Because
No.
I just assumed you would have to take parking out on one side. It looks so narrow.
No, parking, no, that 2 cars would not fit. But the part of the discussion that we had was you're looking at a traffic volume, and we don't have a daily total there, but most estimates we've had from the past are around 500 or so cars a day. The likelihood of having 2 cars coming head on in the block, it's the same issue you have right now where you don't have enough room to pass. And there's a lot of streets in town where you don't have room to pass 2 cars. And then one just has to wait, let the other one pass. And that's the limiting factor. I know Councilman Michelangelo was starting to talk about that for Cass Street. And it's the same philosophy there. We don't want it to be easy to get down these streets. I mean, it's always a balancing act. We don't want it to be impossible, but we don't want to make it so easy that people that don't belong there have a desire to use those. And in Harrison, we just haven't seen very much traffic. And especially if you leave Cass Street open at Kroger, I don't think you're going to get traffic migrating from Cass to Harrison. That's going to be the other concern we have. But we do not have enough room to pass 2 cars, one in each direction on Harrison. You do on Cass if you only have parking on one side. But again, we're trying to minimize the disruption and not make radical changes to parking until we see whether they're necessary. Now, one thing I didn't get to, and I know we're starting to run out of time on my.
We are. So Kelly, the cars one would have to pull over so the other could drive by. So it's an interchange back and forth. Andrew, your question or comment?
Yes, sir. Very briefly, there doesn't exist an intersection in this picture that Monroe Township does not share with us or is entirely resided in Monroe Township. Have they reached out to comment on this issue at all?
Not lately. I mean, I think there was some discussion a couple of years ago when it first came up, but nothing recently. We didn't reach out to them either. No.
Okay.
Right. That's accurate. There's been no comment as far as they've definitely, I think members in the township have listened in and watched, but they've not provided any thoughts.
Your Honor.
Yes, John.
My last comments are I would prefer that we maintain course and revert Harrison and Cass to 2-way and forego the barriers at this point until we can get some additional data after the conversion takes place.
I agree with that. I'll see if there's other. Vince, were you saying something?
No, I think I'm obviously getting a consensus that we'll take the barriers out. And so when we send out a letter to the residents. We'll just inform them that we're, with the two-way conversion and then the on-street parking plan as presented, and leave the barricades out of consideration for our public meeting with the residents.
I know you had two more items. I think we'll move forward. I think there's at least.
Yeah, I don't have anything further that's important enough that we want to push off the other two items. So there's other discussion in the balance of the memo. I'll let you read that on your own, but that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Vince?
Next item is just, again, another update with our marijuana ordinance. I had mentioned we'd only met once, and that was last week to, kind of talk a little bit about our December 21st work session. I think there was a couple of requests that we had regarding some buffering. And then I think there was a request that Mr. Green had sent the properties on a spreadsheet that were part of the buffering consideration. So I'm looking for Mr. Green if he's available to share the screen.
Sure, I am available, and if I've been made a co-host.
Yep.
Okay.
Have been. So you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, so I'm assuming everyone can see this new map. You're like my classes, you have to say yes or.
Yes, we can see it.
This is the map that was requested. If you remember back, we had about 10 different maps that had various buffering on them, 500, 1,000 with different things. And I think the request that came back was to look at buffering with 1,000 foot on schools, and then reducing the buffering on daycares, parks, and churches to 500 feet. And that's what this map is showing. And again, it still leaves a number of spaces that I think, as everyone can see, that are primarily residential that are open in this location. Bulk of the area being east of I-75 still available, and just some of that in the Turns Industrial Park area that would be actually accessible and usable. So we do have a little bit of a variation from what we saw, but again, everything all of the maps seem to show that it would be this port area would be the primary location, because again, everything in the green north of and east of I-75 is basically property that is not accessible or usable. And so, as Mr. Pastu indicated, we did meet, we had some discussions on what this zoning might look like, this revised zoning, but we also had some discussions on the types of facilities that City Council might like to see. And I think the group as a whole is looking for direction as to what those facilities might be, because at that point, we can specifically tailor an ordinance to those facilities, whether it's one or two or all of the facilities that are called out in the legislation. We can also identify potential locations for them, along with zoning and the availability of land in those areas. And then I think probably our best bet would be to go with an overlay district, because again, I don't think we want to simply say that a marijuana provisioning center or a marijuana processing center is located in an I-1 area, because we have those in several locations throughout the community. So I think creating an overlay district that is specific to a particular area would probably make the most sense if we're looking to limit those facilities. So again, I think what the group was, and I think what came out of the discussion, and I would look to Mr. Pastu, Chief McCormick, the mayor was involved with that meeting. But I think what the question was really, we were looking for further direction as to what types of facilities City Council may want to look at, and then we could form an ordinance or create an ordinance based upon that.
And I think just to emphasize, I think we just need to gauge the appetite of council for more of a retail operation. You know, there's some areas it looks like you could plop them in along Telegraph potentially, using this buffering mechanism, but there may be others. And I think with some of the other more industrial related type of uses that are non-retail, we could find a way to incorporate those in an overlay district and still meet many, address through the buffering requirements and find them in districts that would probably be appropriate for that type of use. So
I see some hands raised, so we'll get some comments if we could. Andrew, I'll start with you and then go to Brian.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did the committee discuss at all? I think we might have briefly discussed at our last meeting about buffers around the businesses themselves when they go up and what those will look like. Given the available land space that we have shown on the map, there certainly is a possibility for those industries to be concentrated in a particular part of town, and that the residents of that community may not want everything shoved in there altogether just because, well, that's where it's out of the buffer zone of everything else. So I was just wondering if the committee discussed that. And just as a reminder, were there 5 types of licenses? It's logistics and shipping and processing, retail, micro business, and testing.
Yeah, I think that's good question, Andrew. Maybe I'll just read through those real quick. But I think from the committee side, we're having conversation kind of around that, but then it was like not knowing what the appetite may be for council members. Maybe there's ones that we may be considering putting in and then spend the time doing that, not knowing what it is. So the first was as definitions as they were, says marijuana establishment, which listed all those that are to follow next. The marijuana grower, of course, that's to cultivate. The marijuana micro business, which is cultivate not more than so many plants, process, package, and transfer, sell to individuals 21 years or older. So that's grower, micro business, processor, where they obtain the marijuana from an establishment, process and package, and they can sell or otherwise transfer the marijuana. Then there's the real retailer. I think everybody knows what that is. Front door sales. Then there's the secure transport, which is about transporting it from one establishment to another. And the last is the safety compliance facility, which is the certification of the potency and presence of contaminants. So those are the 6 that are there. Is that what you're looking for?
Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Yes, Jeff?
I think also is to address Councilman Felder's questions of not having an overabundance of facilities in one area. Again, council can decide how many licenses they want to give for any particular type of thing. So, that would be included. But also, generally, there are buffers placed on these once they go in, and it could be 500 feet, it could be 1,000 feet. I think, as we mentioned last time in our discussion, there are, in some communities, they're trying to get around the distances apart by measuring from the door of the facility to the, to the property line of the next. And I think typically what we have always done with any type of zoning issues and notifications and all those things that we do in the planning department is we go from a property line to property line. And so, again, if it was 1,000 feet, a distance between provisioning centers or processing centers or whatever they might be, then it was 1,000 feet from the property line to the next property line. And I think that gives you adequate space so that there isn't a concentration of those. Again, council would have to decide what they want that particular distance to be, whether I think generally used as 500 and 1,000 have been the typical ones that we've seen when we're kind of looking at some of these ordinances.
Andrew, you got a follow-up?
If I may. Yes, a follow-up on specifically to the licensure type. At least my mind, and I guess we'll get the rest of the thoughts of the rest of the council. was a logistics facilities, safety and compliance, which I think along with the highway, with that nice asset there will complement each other nicely. And then the micro businesses seem to have, in the narrowest footprint, the largest revenue potential per square foot to the city. And then it also sort of limits the scope there of the operations. So I think that's a very moderate approach, and it keeps things, small business, keeps it local.
Okay,
Those were my thoughts.
Okay, Brian was first, then I'll get to John. Brian.
Yeah, just a quick one for Jeff. If you can you email me that map? It's really kind of hard to see on the screen here. I just like better look at that, just to get a really good idea of where exactly all of these places could end up, and also it would allow us to get an idea of how many we should allow. I think if all of us get a better look at this map, then we can kind of get a better idea of where exactly we're pointing out that these can be had, or these shops can open up.
Sure, we can send those out.
That'd be great. Thanks. John?
Yeah, Your Honor, I mentioned this the last time we talked about buffering. We're a historic community, and when you do buffers like churches, schools, daycare providers, you're basically going to consume the majority of your town. I really think that we need to be strategic on where we want to put these. For example, and I don't want to be sarcastic, but I'm making a point. I would prefer to have a retailer, a marijuana retailer downtown on the first floor than another law office. Because the law office just doesn't bring any activity to the downtown. The other thing, if we're strategic, and we said we're only going to give out 1 or 2 retail licenses, and we identified specific areas, then we could attach standards to these in the way of design, so the applicant, not only they buy the location, but then they have to submit to the city a set of designs that would have to comply with what our expectations are. And I think we could use this to redevelop some portions of our town. For example, we've always had a problem on the west side of Monroe Street between First and Front. We've got buildings there that are vacant, underutilized, and designating that side of the street over there for 1 license would probably put enough competitive pressure that one of those buildings would be bought and totally renovated, and we can make that a requirement. That if anybody goes in, as part of our application process, not only do they renovate the ground floor, but they have to renovate the entire building and bring it up to code. So,
John, I missed that. You said on Monroe Street or?
Well, I'm just using it as an example. We've had a lot of difficulty with the buildings on the west side of Monroe Street.
Got it.
Between Front and First. If we designated that block as a potential location for a retailer, somebody would likely come in, buy one of the buildings, and if we had standards that said they need to renovate the entire building as part of the application and approval process, we could use recreational marijuana as a redevelopment tool in our community. So I think I'm suggesting we use it, think about it a little bit differently than the buffer concept. Strategically, think about where we would encourage or want to locate these, and then designate those areas as redevelopment for the recreational marijuana, be it the testing, the processing, the logistics, or the retail. And then just specify certain zones, and that's it, period. And specify the numbers. Because we don't have to allow an unlimited amount, like Jeff said. We can specify the numbers, which would drive market demand, and hopefully would get some, we'd get some good applications out of it. I just wanted the council to think about that type of an option.
Okay. Other council comments?
Your Honor,
Kelly?
I wanted to ask Jeff, do you have any research on cities comparable to our size and what they've allowed in their cities? How many facilities?
I really don't. It's relatively new, and probably the closest thing at hand would be Monroe Township and some of the things that have went on there with their licenses. But we can look into that and see what's going on. I mean, some communities have had them since the Medical Marijuana Act was passed, and they went ahead and offered and allowed dispensaries at that point in time. Even though it was not called out in the Medical Marijuana Act itself, they went ahead and allowed those, but we can check into it if that's something that council would like us to do.
I see a couple more hands. I'll go back to Brian, then come back to Andrew, and then I have some comments myself. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Maybe out of state, like Colorado, states that have had it in hand prior to us, maybe searching out some of those cities that have converted their ordinances to such things. So maybe we look into something like that.
Andrew?
In response to the councilwoman's question, Michigan Municipal League has actually put out several publications regarding after the legalization of marijuana, how communities have responded and how it's been impacted them. So you can see in Michigan sort of how communities have dealt with it, the different strategies that they've employed, and then what in the end has happened. So I'm sure that, we're a member of them. They can provide us with some resources. Mm-hmm. It was in their monthly magazine a couple months back.
Okay.
But again, Mr. Mayor, this is all relatively new for all the communities. So this is continuing to grow. It's continuing to change in every community as more and more facilities come in, more and more applicants come in. So, but we can look up that information along with getting you the maps. We can also see what publications are out there that might be readily available, like the Michigan Municipal League, and get that out to you as well.
So can I just, for, administration's sake, just, pursue Mr. Eichelangeli's comment about thinking about this strategically. Is council, is there an interest in doing that?
Well, I had my comments, but go ahead, Andrew.
I would have an interest in at least allowing ourselves the option of doing that, and depending on how we're zoning this, if we were to have some sort of PUD override that would allow us to have a business engaged in that with direct oversight on how those, because obviously that would come with more conditions if we're talking about redeveloping the buildings and redeveloping parts of the downtown, and certainly the investment thresholds that would be necessary to do that. So at least for sort of a PUD option where council has sort of a more direct oversight of a particular project, yeah, I'd absolutely be in favor of that.
So I guess I'll make some comments and then see if Vince, if the council members have other comments for your question. So, there's no question we want, redevelopment in downtown. It's a matter of what kind of redevelopment that we're looking for. And is this the model in which you want the downtown to be and to start as, whether it be one location or more than one in the downtown? Andrew, your comment is correct that when you said about it brings the largest amount of revenue. I'm not sure what that revenue is going to be. However, you're correct in the ballot proposal that is only the micro business and the retailers in which you'll get revenue back from the state. And I think there's a list of what that means and who gets the money first, where it comes from the state and treasury. If you opt into any of the others, there's not that revenue. And the only revenue that's guaranteed at this point is the $5,000 per license that a municipality may per type of business. And after that, it's the amount that is, I think it's 15% of the overall revenue, and there's other things that fall before that. I think we've all reviewed that before. If not, we can send that back out. I guess I'm not opposed to redevelopment. I'm not sure this is the redevelopment that I would look forward to in the downtown. I think of the items that are on here. I still look at the buffer zones, but getting away from the buffer zones and thinking about, as John said, where's the development? Where's the opportunity with that? I'm not a big proponent of the micro business or the retailer. The transport or the safety compliance, I don't have issues with. I think that that could be managed in the same fashion in the right locations as well. I'm still not sure on the processor because the definition is kind of confusing to me. While it is about obtaining and processing and packaging the marijuana and otherwise transferring, but it also sells sell and transfer. So I'm not sure how that can be both. The grower, I'm not sure we would have the space in the city that when you talk about the grow operation type cultivation, they're going to look for larger tracts, I believe, of space that maybe we'll have something in that area for that, but I'm not sure where that would be currently. That's just my thought. I think as we are watching other areas in the state as they're working through that and also closer to us, you know, the biggest challenge that I see with that is the messaging to the community and the input from the community and what they will support as well or like to see. And I think that's where we got here today is where is that the council, first, what are the items on these types that would be supported by council members and then where? So I'll see if there's other questions or comments or position from council with it. Michelle Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. I look at it on the retail end. I guess I would like some more information on what kind of dollars, what kind of volume are these retailers bringing in? What I can see now, comparing them to what is already open, it looks like the volumes are very high, but what do those dollars look like? And how would that benefit our city? So that's how I want to look at it.
I think we need to probably send out the, not just the definitions again for everybody that might want it, but also, you know, section 14 of the ballot proposal lists the creation of the fund through the state treasury, and then how that's disseminated once revenues in the state. And the 15% is to all retail stores or micro businesses statewide. That's the revenue that would get dispersed by those that get into either one of those or authorize, I should say, those type of establishments within their community. But it does come back to where as well. I think that's the conversation that Vince is looking for. I've heard a couple that would support downtown, others that would not. And I think that there's then the other businesses and where those might be. Other council members? John, go ahead.
Your Honor, I'll just, I'm more than happy to do this. I'm not a proponent one way or the other for recreational marijuana. But if you go on Google Images and type in Michigan downtown marijuana retailers, you get some very dramatic pictures of how these downtown buildings have been renovated almost to the point where if you didn't know any differently, you would think they were jewelry stores. And you want to have an open mind about this. And that's why, I would suggest, and maybe Jeff has the opportunity, he can do it. I'm more than happy to put together 10 or 15 images. The next time we talk about it, we can show all the council. But I'm just saying, we've had such a difficult time getting retailers downtown. This could be an opportunity for us to get a couple, maybe one, at least maybe two buildings totally renovated. So just asking council to keep an open mind on it, that's all.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Green?
One final thought. Again, Councilman Felder mentioned PUD as a possible option, and that certainly is a possible option, but we could also use an overlay district. As I'm sure all of you are familiar, PUD is a rezoning process to a specific district. An overlay could be placed over a particular area without going into rezoning. So I think we could still have the types of regulations that you're looking for potentially. So again, just something else to keep in mind.
Thank you. Mr. Budge, you have your hand raised. Must be an item that you need to let us know about. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to, Your Honor, just kind of speak to the same point that Mr. Green did, that I don't see it necessarily unless we're talking about a specific site looking at PUD, but certainly I think it's fine to create overlay district or districts if there's council consensus as to where these different type of facilities would like to be located, or where council would consider them. I think it's also to say certain of them may be certain districts for certain of the categories, and then certain numbers of those. I'm going to circulate to Mr. Green and Mr. Pastu and Mr. Cochran and any others. The state keeps a listing of communities that have opted in and opted out, and for what number of facilities they allow. And I'll just say that there's a broad range across those. Everything from, and I'll say the way that our neighbors to the south started out with a no cap ordinance that says free reign, will take anybody's applications, we can give as many as we want, down to, you know, ones and twos kind of numbers for different types of facilities. And obviously you have a lot of different both policy considerations for that, as well as I'll say kind of the logistics of how many you may or may not want to have of certain categories of these businesses. I'll say from my perspective, the key thing that came out of the last participation in the committee group was, is there interest in at least having the conversation about, I'll call them the retail side of things, or not, because that will drive a lot of kind of what needs to go into the ordinance, and I think is a big policy question. And that's, at least from my perspective, the big question for the committee. Is that something the council at least wants to continue to explore, so that we kind of have our marching orders for the committee as to what we should be looking at?
Other comments? Kelly? Oh, sorry, Brian, missed you.
We should definitely explore the retail and the micro business. And I don't know the difference between the two. But for no other reason than that if those are the types that are going to generate revenue from the city, for the city. So I think it'd be smart to look into those. I mean, especially we can keep a limit on it. We don't have to be oversaturated like Detroit once was, or even like the township, allowed to happen there. But I think we definitely need to look at those two categories.
Okay.
So let me, go ahead, Mayor.
Brian's got a question, then we'll go to Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just real quickly, it's not necessarily a question, but just a reminder that there are a lot of residents that do live above these above these buildings downtown as well. And I don't know how that goes into the factoring of where we put these facilities as well. I'm definitely in favor of definitely getting these buildings rehabbed. No doubt about that. Just not certain if that's the approach we want to take, but I do have an open mind for it. So I definitely want to listen to see what the possibilities are, as well as knowing what the reimbursement would be to the city for such facilities downtown. So it's something that it begs to listen to and make a decision from there.
Okay, Vince?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, Mr. Green had already, him and I had some discussion. He kind of drafted some general overlay considerations for some of the establishments. But I think what, part of our conversation is we can, go back to that and use that for our committee discussion. But, do the details associated with the overlay district for the various establishments, discuss the number of facilities. Probably some of these will be just one, but I also would probably include a map as to where they would make sense. And then at the end of the day, we got to come to some discussion and some consensus regarding the retail end of it. I think the other type of use is the micro processing, might be a little more challenging, but I think we could put some framework together to kind of start pinning down, okay, what do we want to do? But the retail part is, while we're not getting any necessarily detailed direction, it is out there for thought. And I think that in itself is a positive. So, keep the open mind, and, I think we can work with that and keep pushing to try and get some consensus as to how we're going to draft an ordinance if we do. So, I was going to mention the other thing with it is I was kind of, contemplated, with the special election that's going to be held in May, possibly putting something out there. At this point, I don't think there's enough time to draft an ordinance to present to the community for consideration. Obviously, Michelle and I talked, but the only other thing you could put out there if there was a referendum is to continue the not participating in it, the opting out of it would be about the only thing you would have enough time to consider if you're inclined to put something out on the May election. So I think having said all that, we'll come back with a little bit more, but give some thought to that retail end of it, where and some of the terms and conditions. And we'll work with the terms and conditions regarding a redevelopment potential in the downtown and maybe one area, maybe around Telegraph as well.
Okay, Andrew, kind of final comment, and then I don't think we'll probably get to the last item, but go ahead, Andrew.
Briefly, in response to Councilman Lamore's point, I absolutely agree. Odor is certainly going to have to be something that is maintained and controlled. I think the city does have an odor ordinance on the books right now that's fairly comprehensive. I think that would cover us pretty much in all circumstances, where they would either have to, modify it where, any emissions from the building would have the odors removed, or they'd have to stop operations. That's my reading of it. So.
Okay, Mr. Buds.
I just want to say, from my perspective, yes, we have odor and nuisance things on the books. I would want to also make sure we build that into some of our expectations as far as operations on the regulatory side for marijuana as well. Now, I'll say, to the extent we're going to do this, part of what I would want to see is kind of, at least the way I envision it, so you all know, a description of an overlay district with pages that are very similar to those in the zoning ordinance in terms of description of where, along with some of the regulatory language of how, what, when, where, why, in that type of format, because I think it will fit well. It's going to need to be a zoning ordinance amendment for those purposes. And I think just for both consistency and ease of use that we've talked about, that's sort of the way that I would see. So kind of the graphical depiction of where, the description of what and what regulations, and then followed by, I'll say, kind of what appears a lot of times to be the boilerplate, but is also very important on the kind of restrictions and regulations and how you make sure you're operating in accordance with that. So if we go around, that's at least what I would expect to want to see as far as something before the council from a presentation perspective.
Okay, Vince, I know we're at about 22 after. I'm not sure we'll get through your other item, but maybe something that we want to shift over to the meeting as we've done in the past, but rather than going halfway through it now, maybe something we can put on.
If I may, Your Honor, Ms. Knowles and I had talked about this inevitability, but I would ask council, under the regular meeting to provide, 5-10 minutes roughly to cover the material that we had regarding the principal shopping district and DDA boundary changes. I think she can get through that in 5 to 10 minutes. So
if we, as we get into our regular meeting, we'll obviously look at Clerk Lavoy there as well, something to be motion to be inserted. I think the last time we did it after the original citizens comment. That way those that are attending can make their comments rather than waiting through something additional. If I recall that correctly.
Yep, I think that was it.
Okay, so it'd be to put a presentation from Ms. Knowles regarding the principal shopping district and DDA boundaries. I probably got a couple minutes. Vince, any other item right off the start you want to say, or if there's any final comments from council?
Nothing from administration.
I see Kelly, you have a comment.
Yes, Your Honor. Quickly, I wanted to bring up the naming policy again, because there is a group that still wants to look at the naming of the street or adding the additional name to the street. So I just wanted to keep that in our thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Other comments leaving before we get to the meeting? I see none. If we're all good, I think we'll adjourn from our work session and back in about 5 minutes for the meeting. So I'll adjourn the city's work session. Thank you all.
Just a
Ma'am?
reminder that the YouTube will remain live.
And of course, your microphones as well. Just want to attend to those, maybe mute them. Very good. believe Clerk Lavoy, I believe that everybody's here.
Yes, I was
And
just checking.
I'll wait for your times if we're good.
Right, yes.
Okay, it's 7:30. This time we'll call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Here in the city of Monroe.
Thank you.
Echo Angeli,
Present Grand Rapids, Kent County.
Vining,
Here, City of Monroe.
Jermaine,
Here, City of Monroe.
Wilmore,
Present City of Monroe.
Felder,
Present, City of Monroe.
Mayor Clark,
Present, City of Monroe.
and Clerk Treasurer Lavoy, City of Monroe.
Very good.
The invocation, guide our working together, give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the welfare of the residents of this community.
Thank you. If we would at this time, please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag
of the
of the
United
United
States
States of America,
and to the republic
and the republic for which it stands, one
One
nation, under God,
individual.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Clerk, next item, please.
Next item are any amendments to the agenda.
I'd be looking for support here from our carryover from the work session. Councilman Lamore, your hands up.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to allow for discussion on the principal shopping district.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion from Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder, to amend the agenda to add a discussion or presentation regarding the principal shopping district. I think that also includes the DDA boundaries. Is that correct, Councilman?
Yes, sir.
And we should insert that after the citizens' comment, before communication, for the clerk's note there. Councilman Felder, is that good? Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Echo Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes,
Wilmore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is any comments, any citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take comments from those present this evening. I know we have some attendees. I see one hand is being raised already. Just a reminder on the rules of the chambers, we'd ask you to keep your comments concise to 3 minutes or less. And and also as you identify yourself along with your jurisdiction of residence. Michelle, our clerk treasurer, I think we have one so far.
Yes, and they have been moved to the queue.
Okay, Cole, if you would, identify, please.
Yep, Colby in City of Monroe.
Welcome.
Hi. Is it good to go?
Yes, you are.
Okay, cool. So I'm just in because I'd like to readdress an issue that I brought forth on October 26th, just a few weeks after the Proud Boys hosted the free hot dog rally and initiation ceremony under the controversial Custer statue across from St. Mary's. In that meeting, I had detailed some of the reasons groups like the Proud Boys and Boogaloo Boys were dangerous and considered hate groups by many organizations and community members. And in 2006, 15 years ago, the FBI had released a bulletin warning that was titled White Supremacist Infiltration of Law Enforcement. And as more information comes out about the events that we know occurred on January 6th of 2021, we are seeing that it's not just the police force, but the military, our Congress, and the National Guard. So we ask, how can this have happened? How can a nation with the goal of freedom and justice for all be so riddled with neo-Nazis and white supremacists, transphobic and homophobic people occupying its highest positions of community power? One, despite our great love for this country, we can't ignore that it was founded on genocide and slavery. Its systems of government and law enforcement have been steeped in subjugation of human beings for the profit of wealthy, powerful, and largely white Christian communities since the beginning of its inception. This is why we say it's systemic. To change this requires real fundamental changes to our system, as Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. wrote 54 years ago in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Quote, white Americans must recognize that justice for Black people cannot be achieved without radical changes in the structure of our system, end quote. And two, it was the silence on these issues by people who have the luxury not to worry about these things. And I mean you and I. We have been complicit by being too inactive. I lived my life comfortably enough, mostly safe when I go for a walk. I've benefited from a society that never saw me as a threat based on my appearance or my culture. White society writ large is complacent, and therefore we're complicit. We are too comfortable. We have positions of power, and we don't want to give it up. We don't want to share, and we don't want to rock the boat by helping others get out of the freezing water, especially since in most cases we push them in there. And that's wrong. It has cultivated a society where actively violent people have been allowed to rise up. It created a situation where Black people can be brutalized in the street for demanding their basic human rights. And we see white supremacists are allowed to stand trial, even after shooting up a church or storming our Capitol building and threatening our democracy. White silence is violence. So I'm asking again, will you personally and strongly take a stand against white supremacy and pledge to being actively anti-racist in your private and public lives? As leaders of our community, will you be humble and lead by example, or will you allow racist constituents to be your mouthpiece for their hate? Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Cole. Other comments? I see there's some other hands raised. I'll leave the clerk treasurer. You can bring
There
them.
is. I'm moving the next person in.
If you would identify yourself and your jurisdiction of residence, please.
Hi there, I'm Danny Hoover. I live in the city of Milan in Monroe County. I agree with what Cole expressed, and I would add, if one of the mission statements of Monroe County is to promote countywide economic growth and employment stability by attracting and retaining business development through partnering with government, business, industry, and labor, which will better the quality of life for all people living and working in Monroe County. And we really have to ask ourselves how the types of organizations that are visiting promote organizations that promote and engage in violence will fit into that. We really have to look at ourselves at the end of the day when we go home and ask ourselves if we're meeting the objectives of that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Clerk treasurer.
The next person. Okay.
Okay. Identify yourself and residence of jurisdiction, please. Dan?
Hello, I'm Stan Smith. I live in the city of Monroe. On January 6th, we saw the results of appeasing domestic white supremacist terrorism and hate. Our nation's capital was vandalized and members of Congress threatened, and 5 people killed, including law enforcement officers. The Proud Boys were among the rioters at the Capitol. They participated in the violence and have been identified as one of the groups responsible for the heightened security posture in Lansing and Washington, D.C. When given the opportunity, city council members, save one member, refused to denounce the Proud Boys. The council set the red line at physical violence and property damage. We've now seen what happens when you give extremists the space they need to terrorize our public. We ask again for members of this council to take a personal stand against hate and show that the city of Monroe will not tolerate the anti-democratic violence we saw at the Capitol. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Clerk treasurer, I think there's another voice.
Okay.
Graham?
I'm Denton, city of Monroe. Hard to follow after some of these speeches tonight. I'd also be of the opinion that, well, it is my opinion that when our elected officials are complacent and aren't active in calling out groups like this, that things that you saw like that happened on the 6th occur. I'm of the opinion that I'm not interested in having elected officials who are lame ducks and not calling out white supremacist hate groups. I'd love to see a stronger stance, especially from some of you, in speech and in action, to say that we in Monroe County will definitely not tolerate those actions of terrorism. Thank you again, as always, for your service to the city of Monroe. I know it's not easy to listen to some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Clerk Lavoy, I don't see any others
Nor do I.
this time. Very well. Next item on the agenda, please.
Just one moment, sir.
Yep.
All right, the next item is the presentation on the downtown, what is that? Principal Shopping District and the DDA boundaries. I had to
Thank
find
you.
the right.
If I may,
Thank you.
introduction,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Bastu, I know that Annette Knowles has joined us. Welcome, Annette. Vince, go ahead, please.
You know, part of it is that in the past, we've had exploring the principal shopping district as our one of our city council goals and objectives. We are looking to put that together. And I'm going to have Annette talk a little bit about that, but also just a follow-up as to what we're looking at doing as far as the boundary changes. I think we talked about a couple of months ago, and trying to fit it into the window that we may very well accomplish this prior to the tax roll going out this upcoming May. So Annette, I'll let you walk through that fairly quickly if you could.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to participate in the meeting this evening. For those who don't know who I am, my name is Annette Knowles, and I am the Downtown Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Monroe, largely servicing the work of the Downtown Development Authority. There is a specific reason why I'm here this evening, and it was precipitated by a discussion to create a principal shopping district within, as a subset of the downtown area. I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me. Hopefully this will work. All right. So in order to create a principal shopping district, we must follow actions that are prescribed in the State of Michigan Public Act 120 of 1961 as revised. Within the state act, there is a condition that needs to be met in order for municipality to form a PSD. And I've condensed the phrase to a local governmental unit with a master plan for the physical development of a local governmental unit that that includes an urban design plan designating a principal shopping district, or includes the development or redevelopment of a principal shopping district. And there are other parts to that segment, but I wanted to highlight that it must be a unit of government with a master plan that includes the urban design plan designating a principal shopping district. When the current downtown master plan and parking study were prepared and approved in 2008, 2009, that document did not include that language. At the time, there was not a consideration of creating a PSD, therefore the topic was not introduced. So because we are at the place now where we are considering, or the city, you are considering whether or not this is appropriate for the community, we need to take the steps in order to put these this opportunity into place. And so one of the actions that has to occur is the downtown master plan needs to be amended to include that language. And the proposed language would be to establish a principal shopping district, the boundary of which is to be determined, with the purpose of performing maintenance and marketing functions in the district. And it would be located and inserted within 3 places in the downtown master plan. I don't have the plan up on the screen, obviously, but for your reference, there would be on page 56 as a bullet under upgrade the public realm, on page 83 as a bullet under next steps, and then on page 125 as item C 10-5, within a time frame of 3 to 5 years. And this corresponds back to the 2008 adoption. So we're already approaching year 3, which is why it would fall into that 3 to 5 year time frame. This item was introduced to the Citizens Planning Commission because they are the authority or the jurisdiction that would have some responsibility as to updating the downtown master plan. So it is pending with the Citizens Planning Commission at this time. However, in order to meet the timetable that the city manager would like to pursue, we are targeting completion of the process to amend the downtown master plan on by the end of March. So the next document that I would like to review includes timeline and schedule, which is tentative for actions to amend the downtown master plan and create the PSD. And I'll go into the TIF and development plan section separately. It's an unrelated topic. So in order to prepare or complete the downtown master plan amendment, we must follow a process that is similar to the creation of the initial master plan. So we've outlined some steps that we have to take. Some of the items are dates are to be determined. I need to re-coordinate with Community Development Director Jeff Green in order to meet some of the timetables that are established by state law, and also correlate that with possible and potential meetings of the Citizens Planning Commission, but recognize that there is a process to amending the downtown master plan, as is there is a process to create the principal shopping district. So it's basically a 5-step process to create the principal shopping district. And again, in order to meet the timetable established by the city manager, we're looking to complete this process by the end of April. So this evening we are familiarizing the city council with the process, and then there are a series of steps that have to take place. One, the council must initiate the process. Then the city staff would create a report that would be submitted to the city council in order for them to take action on establishing a public notice and a public hearing, which we're anticipating holding in March. From there, the city council would take action to authorize the city assessor to produce a roll, at which point the council would accept that roll and set yet another public hearing where the interested parties can make comments. So once you've created or authorized the initiation of the process, accepted a report, had a public hearing, make a determination of necessity, authorize the assessor to prepare a roll, have another public hearing on the roll, and then adopt the PSD is a 4-month-long process. After that is completed, then we would need to appoint a board of directors for the principal shopping district separately, but that is a consideration, recognizing that we would need to find appropriate talent to put on that board. So with that, I'll take a pause to see if there's any questions about that particular process.
You know, if I will, again, it's just, you know, there's a lot of other functional items that a PSD can do, but I think starting it off simple with maintenance and also with promotions, marketing events, those type of things, may be the easiest way to get this rolling. And Annette and I have talked about only doing this for a 2-year period to get it initiated and in place. And so that would be our process, but there's multiple opportunities for comment from those folks that would receive notice of the first being a notice of necessity and the second being an assessment role if in fact the council moves forward with that. So
Councilman Michelangelo, and then I'll see if there's other comments.
Thanks, Your Honor. I guess I have one comment for the PSD in terms of inclusion of projects is that at least on our last budget, we noted that the general fund is picking up about $23,000 to $26,000 a year on parking. And I think that any shortfall that we have in the parking fund should be made up by the PSD because those are the folks that are benefiting from the parking program downtown, and the general taxpayer shouldn't have to pay for that. It should be an expense of the businesses. That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Other questions or comments from council at this time? I think there's quite a bit of timeline and information probably going to be sent out to council. I'd like to see that sent out so we could really review it as well as we move forward on this timeline. Councilman Lamore, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was present at the Citizens Planning Commission meeting, and they had several great questions that they asked. And I can assure you that they're going to make a very good decision on this. And when they send it forward to us, so you can look forward to hearing from them in the very near future.
Thank you. Other comments at this point from council?
Your Honor.
Yes.
I just have a comment from a technical standpoint, but if Ms. Knowles could just make sure that she includes the clerk treasurer's office in the public notice planning and the hearings, et cetera. And even if I'll get with you so I can get a copy of the draft proposed timeline, just because the clerk's ultimately responsible for making sure everything gets in the paper, et cetera, when it's supposed to. Everything is noticed properly. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Your Honor.
We will. Yep, I'll add you to the distribution.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So the second topic I wanted to briefly cover would be an amendment to the Downtown Development Authority's tax increment financing and development plan and the related DDA ordinance that has been passed by the City Council. The DDA ordinance portion is relatively simple in that because the State Act 197 of 1975 has been replaced by Act 57 of 2018, given the opportunity to make all these changes all at once, we're basically just we'll be proposing to update the language to be more consistent with state law. For the tax increment financing and development plan, the DDA undertook an examination of properties within its current district, and it was recognized that there are some areas of the current DDA district that are resulting in a negative growth of tax increment financing resources, and the board would like to take this opportunity to make it, perhaps I'll use the word more whole in the sense that, making the budget more sustainable for the DDA district till the current TIF plan expires in 2037. Plus, there's some opportunity to include some properties that have been identified for redevelopment in the downtown master plan. That it might be an opportunity for the DDA to realize the results of the potential increases in taxes to be able to pay for some of the other projects that are in that downtown master plan. But again, there is a process to do this as well. The DDA will be at its meeting tomorrow morning, reviewing more thoroughly a proposed district and proposed changes to the tax increment financing and development plan, at which point we would approach the City Council to take action. Once the DDA has its review tomorrow, it's really in the hands of the City Council at that point to approve or disapprove the recommendations. It does require a similar process to what you recently completed with the creation of the Corridor Improvement Authority, and it would be also coincide with actions taken to create the DDA in the first place. So there is a public hearing that must be held. We must publish notice of the public hearing, post it in conspicuous places in the downtown, mail it to the taxpayers of record, and then provide by certified mail to taxing jurisdictions. It requires 2 public notices, so we've documented that within this timetable. As an additional step, we'd like to hold a meeting with the taxing jurisdictions from which the DDA captures taxes to explain the amendment and its purposes, so that these taxing jurisdictions can answer or ask questions and be able to feel more comfortable about moving forward with changes. At which point there would be the public hearing in March, and then lastly, a council resolution to adopt the amended and restated tax increment development and financing plans. Again, meeting the timetable in order for changes to be effective at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
Councilman Felder, you have a question or comment?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you, Your Honor. As we proceed with this timeline, I hope that at some point we can squeeze in a strategy discussion as we talk about the DDA and the PSD. I know that in the past the DDA has sort of been tasked with the dual role and has tried sort of to fulfill both those roles at once in terms of actual development of the downtown and then just promotion of local businesses and sort of events and just beautification and stuff like that. As we proceed with the principal shopping district, I think it's important that we view those roles as separate and draw the roles and responsibilities of each body so that they're not playing in each other's territory, and that it's clearly defined for each of them what the expectations are and why we're doing this. I think it's the downtown business owners have felt it so necessary that both of these entities should exist that they have taken it upon themselves to create them with the DMBN. I think it's good that they do that. I think that sort of external action is certainly laudable. They're volunteering their own time to do this. But I think here is we are now creating a vessel that has funding attached to it by which the things that they are trying to accomplish, I think, can be accomplished. But I think it's important that we don't have duplicative services between these two entities, and that institutionally they are set up in such a way to complement and not compete with each other. So I don't know where exactly that conversation belongs in the timeline, but as we talk about creating or amending them, that it's a necessary conversation for us to have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Councilman.
If I may just follow up with that, I was going to talk about it under manager's comment, but I think it's phenomenally important what Councilmember Felder mentioned, and I do think there is a strategic purpose and plan for a lot of this. And when I asked for a special meeting to go through a number of things, this is kind of one of them that I had in mind. We do need to talk about how this fits into the big picture from at least from administration standpoint. So I do think there's a time and fairly soon that we need to have the conversation in more detail.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from council? I'll look to Ms. Knowles or Vince if there's anything further this evening on this.
No, I think it just matter. What we wanted to accomplish tonight was to give you an idea of what the process is, that it will be moving pretty quick. And again, I think there's more conversations that we need to have as to how that will fit. I will follow up on Mr. Icoangeli's comment about the parking. I think we can put some general language in there without too much detail as we write up the aspect of the principal shopping district and what the funds could be used for. So,
very good. Well, thank you, and thank you, Annette, for staying through the work session into the council meeting to present this, and look forward to the information dissemination as well as our next steps. So, thank you both. And
thank you.
Yep. Clerk Lavoie, next item, please.
Next item is under communication, item 3001, the Opportunity Center at ALCC 2021 first quarter report to City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu.
I really don't have anything else to add unless there's some comments or questions that council had, and we'd follow up with that. And similarly with the legislative activity that was requested at the last meeting, if there was any follow up on that one, I would have probably Mr. Cochran talk a little bit about any questions you might have.
We have two Councilman Michelangelo, go ahead.
Yeah, the question for Vince. The proposed drawing that was attached to their quarterly report for, it looks like a community garden.
Yes.
Is that, I was trying to read it, is that the parcel that's would be on the north side of the alley?
Correct.
And now, isn't that going to be part of the same area that is going to be studied, that's in the request for proposal for the potential expansion of the community center?
Yes.
So
I don't, Mark, is there anything you might want to add with that?
Yeah, the community garden was part of the design that we just submitted for the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation and received the $70,000 grant for funding. So this summer is going to be the planning for the construction of that, which will likely coincide and go along with the work of the study that you're referring to, Councilman. So it may shift around a little bit, and some of the design proposals are going to come out of the space analysis we're doing for the center and the library.
okay, I was just curious that we weren't going to implement something that is part of another study. We may have to take it out later on.
Yeah, that was a conceptual design that we submitted with the grant application.
Okay, I'm good, thanks.
Great question. Thank you. I think it shows where the various items and how they cross over and make sure we're thinking of those. So I appreciate the question and the response, Mark. With that, we have two correspondents. Is there other questions from council? If not, we'd, I guess, just I don't know, I guess looking to Clerk Lavoie for, you want a motion, or should we have a motion to accept the communications?
I think we should, and I just want to state it just for those following along at home who didn't hear it. Item 3002 is the second item they're referring to, and that's legislative activities update to City Council. So yes, we can, I'm fine with one motion to accept both communication though.
And I'll see if there's any questions on those. If not, I see no hands. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion that we accept, place on file communication 3001 and 3002.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Michelangelo, supported by Councilman Lamore, that the communications item 3001 and 3002 be accepted and placed on file. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
She's getting off mute in a second.
Yes.
Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Germaine,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
All right. The next item is under council action, item 3003, 2020 building demolition program change order for 2 additional properties.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu.
Just quickly, we're requesting that council approve a change order with our existing contractor, Vincon, who's working with the existing demolitions. They would be honoring their bid prices for the properties at 1249 East Elm and 1222 Franklin Court. And the amount of that would be $35,600 with a total to be encumbered of $41,000 for that change order.
Thank you. Councilman Lamore?
Yes, just making a motion, Your Honor. I make a motion that change order for the 2020 building demolition program for work at 1249 East Elm Avenue and 1222 Franklin Court be awarded to Vincon Incorporated of Plymouth, Michigan, the amount of $35,660, that a total of $41,000 be encumbered to include a 15% contingency, and that the Director of Engineering and Public Services be authorized to sign the change order on behalf of the City of Monroe.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder on item 3003 as stated. I'll just see if there's any final comments from council members. Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
yes,
Wilmore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $581,379.55, 581,379.55.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Items on the consent agenda for council to pull? I see none. Others attending, any items on the consent agenda wish to be pulled for further discussion?
I see no hands.
I see no hands. Well, there's a panel. Oh, Councilman Felder, I'm sorry.
I would just like to make a motion, Your Honor, if nothing else.
Please do, sir.
I motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and the recommendations carried out. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Michaelangeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes,
Wilmore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
I have no further items, Your Honor.
No further items. Next item on the agenda is council comments. It's January. Councilwoman Whitman.
Yes, Your Honor. I only have one comment, and this is a new year. We have a new president tomorrow. And I would like for us all to think about being good role models and, bringing some unity back to our nation. That I don't know what exactly has been going on. I don't know what the solution, if there is one solution, but I do know that we can be good role models. And that would be my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Michaelangeli.
Thanks, Your Honor. I agree with the Councilman Whitmer. I think the city council is a good role model. I have a couple of things. One is I want to thank the administration for their perseverance on getting the house at Harrison and 2nd or 3rd Street torn down. It makes the street look a heck of a lot better. And thank you. Regarding some of the citizens that discuss the white supremacy issue, I certainly don't have a problem if this becomes a city council work session agenda item, because personally, I don't have a problem passing a resolution stating that I'm not in favor as a citizen or as a councilman in the whole concept of white supremacy. I mean, we've seen what it's happening, Proud Boys, we got the Aryan Nation, we got the 3%ers, we got the Patriot Front. The FBI's got a list of about 50 of these organizations. And I think they're starting to permeate our society a little bit too much. And I kind of agree. I think at some point elected officials have to say, like Lindsey Graham did about 3 days ago, enough is enough. So I think we should discuss it. I do have a statement that I want to read, and it won't take long, but I just felt it was something that personally as a council person and as a citizen that I needed to say. We have all seen the events that have happened on January the 6th. The majority of Americans were horrified at the spectacle of our capital under siege by a group of protesters, convinced that the presidential election was stolen through fraudulent voting, specifically in the battleground states, of which Michigan is one. Although there has been no court actions confirming any of these allegations, these rumors, they still persist. And they have been to a certain extent fueled by our federal and state legislatures. Tim Walberg, Dale Zorn, and Joe Bellino have promoted this misinformation many times in the Monroe Evening News. They have promoted this information as well as allegations and actual fallacies of what happened during the last election. The constant barrage of widespread voter fraud allegations advanced by our elected officials helped fuel the fire of insurrection that culminated at the Capitol on January the 6th. I'm imploring these gentlemen to stop this messaging. I'm asking them to respect the sanctity of our right to vote. I am asking them to uphold their constitutional oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution and stop these remarks regarding voter fraud and voting irregularities. I am asking them to do what they were elected to do: serve their constituents, improve our state's quality of life, represent all voters, not just Republican voters. And above all, I'm asking them to stop this ridiculous and now dangerous discourse on a stolen election and get back to work for the good of their districts. I thought long and hard about this over the weekend. I questioned myself if I should even bring it up. But yesterday, during the many news briefings and documentaries on Martin Luther King, one of the sayings that he said at one of his speeches rang out clear to me. And he said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And I have to tell you, what's happened on January 6th, what our representatives have done and our state senator regarding this misinformation needs to be called out, and they need to be asked to stop. And that's what I'm asking them. I agree with Paula. It's time for unity, but you can only have unity when people start talking to each other and quit with the misinformation. So thank you. I just wish everybody, I wasn't at the last meeting after the holiday. I hope everybody has a new year. Look forward to having a great 2021 with the council on the various projects that have been presented by the administration through the capital improvement program and some of the programs that were talked about today. The only other thing I would ask is, just so we all get it right, I would like very much if Chief McCormick could provide the council a list of those white supremacy groups that the FBI considers domestic terrorists. That'll help narrow down at least my thought and my discussion. So with that, Your Honor, thank you very much.
Marius made it. Councilwoman Viney.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Well, I'm excited about the Orchard East sub-area plan, as well as finally the Navarre and Opportunity Center space analysis. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And I just want to wish everyone a Happy New Year again, and just hope that everyone will be safe during these trying times. I want to thank the citizens for their comments, as well as the council members who have spoken out against some of the travesty that we see going on in the country right now. So I do appreciate those comments, and I hope we as a council will continue to work together. I do agree with the councilman that we should look towards some sort of resolution as a council, just so that the citizens are confident that we do not support racism and white supremacy and other hateful rhetoric. So I do agree with that. And that is all if I'd like to, I don't know if the chief is on. I didn't look at the police chief is on, but has he received any or have any reason to think there's a threat in our particular county or city? And I don't know if he's on the line or not.
Chief McCormick is present. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Honorable Mayor and Council, Charles McCormick, Chief of Police. Yes, we're here in regular communications with our federal partners in the Ann Arbor and Detroit office, monitoring obviously the ongoings, but we've received no credible intelligence that we have anything here locally, but we're certainly making the appropriate plans in case there is. Working with the sheriff's office and the Michigan State Police on that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with John and Kelly on both counts. And I know as a council that we do not support any extremist activities or condone any violence against the Capitol, against our municipalities, or any private constituents by any organizational group, by any means, supremacist or otherwise. That's all I want to say, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. I definitely agree with all of council not supporting any kind of domestic violence in any form, any fashion, any way. Obviously, this has been long coming over the last so many years. I think moving forward, we need to unite. I agree with that 100%, and we need to stay united somehow, some way. We have to find that middle ground and stick to it. So absolutely, I support that 100%. Another council agenda that we missed, that we didn't hear about, the mayor made some new appointees to the city boards and commissions. I'd like to congratulate those people and thank them for taking on the tasks that they're taking on. Without them, we can't do our job here at City Council. So once again, I want to make sure that they're welcomed into doing their job here, as well as thanking them for doing their job. The Opportunity Center, it was nice to see that presentation that they sent to us. If anybody would like to see that, we'd be more than happy to send that to them. Great to see the Opportunity Center thriving and doing so well, especially during these times. So thanks Stephanie Kaprzak for her wonderful presentation from the Opportunity Center and all the people that put that together. So thank you on that. One other comment I'd like to make regarding citizen comments, no offense to any of the citizens that are making the comments, but I think that we've discussed this before, that sometimes it can be a little distracting to have two sets of citizen comments. And I'd like to somehow make a statement that we make one area for citizens comments, not two, not prior to and after, but just maybe put it at the end of our meeting so that we can basically get all of our discussion done during the meeting without any kind of or sort of interruption. So that's just a thought for this upcoming year, is to make one set of citizen comments versus having the two, one at the beginning and one at the end, but just simply one at the end. And that's all, Your Honor.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. I suppose my sentiments are much the same as the rest of council. This is the first meeting we've had since the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. Political violence is not free speech. I feel like I'm saying the same thing that I said when the Proud Boys came to visit. After that meeting, it's the same thing I said when Mr. Devin Freelon got hit in the face with a bike chain at Sterling State Park. That violence has no place in our community, and people trying to make a political statement through violence or intimidation, that's not free speech or free expression. That obstructs free speech and free expression. Through intimidation and coercion, there is no freedom there. And the exact same mechanism exists in an authoritarian infrastructure for the same purpose, to limit freedom, not to enhance it. White supremacy is unacceptable. Hate speech is unacceptable. Just because what you're saying is legal does not mean what you're saying is right or just or moral. I sat down and watched what happened on the 6th with my family. I took my kids and my wife. I went to my parents' house and I sat with them. I sat with my family, and that's what we did that day. We watched our country be attacked. The country watched itself be attacked. This isn't the first time that we've called for people to be calm or to be neighborly. This is not the first time that city council or members thereof have said, let's disagree but not be disagreeable. And free speech means that I can say what I want and someone says the exact opposite back to me. And if they don't get to say the opposite back to you, then that's not freedom, and we don't live in a free society. And if either side incites violence against the other for reasons of discrimination in race and color or gender and sexual identity, or any other reason, that's not okay, and that shouldn't be tolerated. That shouldn't be accepted. That's political violence. There's no place for it here. Find a different community to live in. We don't want you here. If we were not explicit before, let us be explicit now. It's unacceptable. And there are members that have been elected to represent this community that are not guiltless in the events that happened on the 6th. I have colleagues, I've worked with people that perhaps have said some things that they should not have said, perhaps have said some things that Councilman Icoangeli has called out and said, this isn't okay. People that I was willing to work with, that I was willing to stretch my arm across the aisle and say, I will be a partner in improving our community together and moving forward with you. Behavior like this is unacceptable. It's destroying our country from the inside. We must both come to the table, recognize each other as neighbors, and treat each other with mutual respect. And this council and members thereof have been preaching that for years since I've been here, and no one seems to be listening. I hope they're listening now. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Councilman. And some brief comments. It appears that all of council, since the day of the 6th, have contemplated what we all witnessed, which was despicable. You think about the attack, not only on those that were there and those that were injured and killed, but also our country. And I think that it is something that obviously everybody here on council and those that have spoke this evening and others we've heard from the community think likewise. Just, there is no place. You know, we as a council, I believe, have stood together as far as what was going to be tolerable or not within our community. But at times it requires a louder voice. And I think that's where we are today. And that's where we were probably before this day. I'm not going to go on through all the council members that have spoke all about what we're not going to support. Discrimination. We don't support white supremacy. We don't support those that are taking harmful actions against others. And I think this is a message that we as a council, after we witnessed, but also read follow-up comments and what positions those that are taking regarding this. I think Councilman Icoangeli, your comment on the election, I think of our community and how well and how professional and how accurate our election was held here locally. And I don't understand why it can't be recognized collectively that there are some deficiencies around, but by no means do I think it was an item that made a change within the outcome of the election. I think we all should be looking forward as we move forward this week. And unity is the word. We need to be unified in all that we do. Councilman Felder, you're exactly right. We said it many times. We can disagree, but we're not going to be disagreeable. We have to have a unity within this as our foundation. And that's how we respect and treat each other and respect and treat all those within our community and in our country. Everybody has a right to their voice. How you share that, how you say it is how we have to do that. So I look forward to the conversation that was started here this evening in the council member and working with Mr. Pastu administration, something that we as council can have further discussion in our work session, but also a public voice collectively as well of denouncing these items that were brought forward here today that we're not going to tolerate, not only in our community, but we're not going to tolerate watching it. I'm going to follow up on a comment when we talk about our elected officials as well, those that speak for us, whether it be in Lansing or in Washington, D.C. What I find discouraging is when there's a dislike or a comment to be made, the first thing is to talk about what you don't get along about, how you might be not like something. What I'd like to see is the start of just saying, here's how I think we can get to resolution. Here's where we should be focused on. But I was disappointed to read that it's first how we don't like this, aren't getting that, aren't included with this, then step in and take care of it. Step in and make action. You can't just do it from the sidelines. So I'll stop that because it's going to tie to my next comment. And I want to thank Councilman Lamore for bringing recognition to the appointments this evening. I want to thank council for supporting the numerous appointments that were on this evening's agenda. We do have some vacancy. I know that Councilman Feller and I shared some communication. While they may be minimal at this time, there are vacancies, and they're all vacancies that do come up at times because they're unexpired terms. Areas of the Historic District Commission, the Telegraph Corridor Improvement Authority that I know Mr. Cochran and I are working on to find a business owner that will fill that last void. The Trail Advisory Committee, something that's very important within our community, that council set up this committee. And yet in the last 2 weeks, we've only received one application or interest to serve. So we need support in that from our community as well. There are others that may come open in the future, whether it be the Mineral Housing Commission. And then there's two commissions that the council has purposely not filled at this time. I have not sent recommendations because they're going to require our discussion, our work sessions. And I know these are on Mr. Pastu's list of some of those extra sessions that we're going to have. And that's resurrecting the Library Advisory Commission. We've talked about that because of the whole realm around the Opportunity Center, the Navarre Library, but the Navarre Library and the Dorsch Library, and the residents' opportunity to be an active participant in how we provide those services, not only to our youth, but our seniors as well. The facilities and the administration is very well involved with the Monroe County Library System, make sure that we're improving and attending to the facilities themselves. But this is about the operations and how we can support that as not only as a council, but more so the community. The other is the Recreation Advisory Commission. I know we've talked about that because we really need a whole real comprehensive review on that. What is that going to be? Is it less activities and recreation versus it is quality of life? Different levels of how we provide those activity of not just recreation, but health and wellness. And so those are two on our list that as a council, I think we have for this year in 2021 to bring back to the residents. Which brings me to the attendees this evening, the attendees that we get every meeting. Yes, you too can serve as a volunteer on a board and a commission, committee, volunteer. The heart and soul, I've said it before, the heart and soul of every community is the volunteerism. I appreciate the fact that people come in and want to voice their opinion and voice their concerns and give us that as feedback during our meetings. But to step into the arena and be a part of your community as a volunteer on a board and commission will broaden not only the scope of the committee, but broaden the horizon of everybody that is serving in those. So if you have any questions on those, the applications can be found on the website, and I'm more than willing to have a discussion and an opportunity to explain all of what those are. There's many committees, and while we fill vacancies tonight, that doesn't mean we don't have vacancies coming in our June sessions or every year. So I encourage those that have the opportunity and the time and a willingness to want to work together in serving all of our community to look at that as well. I think I'll stop with that. That was kind of 3 topics I had on my list. And Clerk Treasurer Lavoie.
I just have a few things. First, Councilman Lamore mentioned the report from the regarding the Opportunity Center. Communications are part of the packet that's available online to anyone. And then if you do have trouble finding it, please don't hesitate to contact the clerk's office. So thank you, Councilman Lamore, for mentioning that. I want to thank Councilman Iko Angeli for his words. You really articulated what I've been unable to put into words the last week. I guess it's only been about a week, but so thank you for that. This kind of goes along with what the mayor said. One of the best ways that I know to fight the things that are happening in our country and in our community even is to be involved with community organizations, as the mayor was saying. And it doesn't just have to be nonprofits in the community that are working to make things better, but also the boards and commissions of the city itself is a great way to start. So my family and I will continue in 2021 to be involved the way we have been with various community organizations. There's so many people who are working really hard to make things better, and action right here in my own backyard is probably what I have the most control over. So if you feel like you want to make a difference and you're looking for something and just feel like it's all too big, there's so many local groups that would be welcoming of your participation. So if you haven't been involved, I encourage you to join us. There's so much to do and there's so much good work happening, and you could only add to that. The other way I know is to do the job I was elected to do to the best of my ability. So it's one, making sure that communications and public notices are just that, public and out there and easily accessible. So please contact your clerk's office if you feel like you're being, unable to find what you need. But it also is to conduct the elections as fairly and as efficiently as possible. And so to that end, I wanted to make the announcement that staff and myself, we've already begun planning for, while we're still wrapping up November 2020, there's still a few things we're doing. We want to let you know that we have a May election coming up. There will be an ISD question on that and potentially another millage question, but we don't have that information yet. So you'll be seeing, we're going to try to, again, make it as safe as possible. We will be opening polling locations, but absentee voting is also going to be available. And for those of you who signed up to be permanent absentee, that number went from about 2,000 to 5,000 in the November election. So about 5,000 registered voters in the city of Monroe will be receiving an application request, a form to request an absentee ballot. We won't be sending ballots to 5,000 people unless they request it. We'll be sending the applications, and that mailing will actually be coming out in February. So there was a lot going on in November, and some people may not, because there was so much paperwork and so much change, some people may not recognize that they actually signed up to be permanent absentee voters. So I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up. There are 5,000 folks who said, yes, I want to receive an application for every election, and we're going to honor that. So if you end up getting an application and you don't want that, please call our office. The beauty of Michigan elections, in my opinion, is that we have local election officials administering local elections. So I'm right here in your city, daily working at City Hall, and you can reach me by phone, by email, or by coming into City Hall and coming to the clerk treasurer's office, and I'll be glad to help you out with the elections and make sure you have what you need to fully participate. So, and if you want to work the election, please give us a call as well. We're always looking for new election inspectors to participate. So thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just the one item I was going to talk about and kind of alluded to it earlier is I would like to schedule a special meeting. I've got a number of things that are kind of piling up and looking at our work session schedule over the next month. I don't want us to get too far ahead on a handful of things without having a policy discussion with council. So I say that, we've typically met on Mondays, but I also recall last year there was, council likes to meet on Saturday mornings. If that, is of interest, I can have Pat Weaver in our office try and set up a time. It won't be this upcoming Saturday, but more than likely a week from Saturday, I think we might be ready. Would that work?
Yeah, Mr. Pesto, I see nodding heads. I think, well, that's a good start point. I think the options, as you just said, and have that be sent out for kind of a response, and we can get that scheduled as soon as possible. I know there's multiple items that you have, and I think the council has as well, as we've heard yet tonight. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. The next item, clerk, is citizens' comment. I see one hand raised currently. You're muted. I see one hand currently.
Councilperson.
Oh,
Felder.
Councilman Felder, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
If I can briefly, Your Honor, and I only bring it up now because if I put it in email, I think it's an OMA violation. I have begun drafting a resolution of condemnation for the capital attacks. If any council members have any notes that they'd like to send me, I would like to draft something up and bring it to the next meeting. And I anticipate that if I send that out in a not public forum, that that OMA wouldn't be so happy. So that's all.
I think that I know, so we've talked here this evening. I think if we at least get it to administration, I think that would give the avenue for. I'm looking, Mr. Budge looks like he's reaching for his microphone here. So with the right path, we get that to the administration. Comments that council may have that we start to draft that, but I'm looking to Mr. Budge maybe because I am not an attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would agree, and I think Councilman Felder accurately acknowledged the Open Meetings Act issue that we don't want to have communication amongst council in a deliberative way outside of a public meeting. So my recommendation would be if Councilman Felder feels he's got a good start there as far as that resolution, to share that with the administration, and then any additional comments that those feel strongly about from council can be sent direct to administration as well. As always, I would say both in private and in public, reply all and group emails are not friends of the Open Meetings Act when it comes to public bodies. So let's continue as we always have to avoid those for any substantive discussion. And then we can get a appropriate resolution back before the city council at a future meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman Felder, and thank you, Mr. Budds.
So we do have one hand raised, Your Honor.
Yes, I do. I think it's Tony. Move him forward, or her.
Yep.
Him, or they. I'm not sure who Tony is. Your name, please, and jurisdiction of residence, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is Tony Trujillo, DEA chairperson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to tell you guys, thank you for all your work. It's been a tough year for everybody, council members, public, citizens, businesses. And I appreciate what John said. It was very nice, Councilman John. That was to the heart. I mean, really, really it was. I served in the military, and it was sickening to see that happen. I mean, it was like they stepped on me. The officer that was, killed, and all the other people that were injured, it was just too much. It was too much. And it's time to put that behind us, move forward, and make Monroe good. And we've been pushing. You guys have seen me here for years and years, and I haven't given up yet. Many times I wanted to, but just like you, I see you guys coming in, you get up, you roll up your sleeves, and you go at it. And that's what it takes. That's what it's going to take for Monroe. Not only the cornerstone, I believe we are a gem. We really are. It just got to be polished up a little. But I appreciate all the help. You guys will see things come down from the DDA. Listening to Annette Knowles, she does a great job for us. I'm really, really pleased. But anyways, you guys have a great evening. Thank you much.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Clerk, other comments?
I don't see any other hands raised.
I do not either. So with that,
motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Support.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman,
Yes.
Iko Angeli,
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Lamore,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you for the participation in both sessions, and stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.
Aye.
Aye.
Night.
Night.